Hello again, and welcome to another dangerous episode of Forbidden Knowledge. My name is Craig. We're live if you're tuned in on March the 4th of 2015. This is being recorded not only to Liberty Tree Radio via Live 365, but it's also being recorded live on Ustream.tv. And if everything works out at the end of the show, it will also be posted on my YouTube channel, Forbid TV. That's Forbid with two D's and then TV, all one word, Forbid TV, and that's on YouTube. So we've got 29 videos up at the moment that I speak right now, and maybe by the end of the night we'll have 30 videos up. We're with Doug again. Doug is a health food store owner in South Lyon, Michigan. That's where we're at right now. And actually, before we get into the program, let me just mention for those on Liberty Tree Radio and those might want to be meeting up with me this weekend, Fort Wayne, Indiana is where I'll be. Fort Wayne, Indiana, on Saturday and Sunday at the Coliseum, Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's if you're listening live on the 4th of March, that is. And the website is forbiddenknowledge.info, or the new website where we're starting to sell product now is theprepperstop.com. Okay, as I mentioned, we're here with Doug. We're doing a live show on March the 4th. If you're listening live, you're welcome to call in if you're on Liberty Tree Radio. I don't have the number in front of me, but most of you already know the information to contact. Questions about health. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be talking about today, but we'll be talking probably mostly about health. That certainly is Doug's specialty, but he has some other specialties too. He's a pretty well-learned man. And what is it what we're going to talk about today? We want to talk about how just some general health or how to live longer, or what would you like to speak on today, Doug?
I think I'd like to see if we can get it crammed in. Just the idea of how do you not just avoid disease, but how do you thrive? How do you have enough energy so that you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours, and during the day you're pretty limber, you're up and around, and you're mentally alert, and basically you got a lot of energy, and but more than the avoidance of symptoms, you're thriving. And how do we get at this state? And basically, I think it's the idea of garbage in, garbage out. It's twofold. You have to, unless you're growing your own food and you know what your soils are like, you have to supplement. Secondly, you have to avoid most of the crap that's in regular supermarkets, the box, bag, packaged, canned um, foods that from soils you have no idea of the quality, and basically it's called the SAD diet, Standard American Diet, and it is sad. It does not sustain health through your 30s and 40s. When I was coming into you know um, planet Earth here, I was a little luckier. I had foods from soils in the 40s, 50s, and 60s before they were totally depleted. And we didn't have all these vaccinations. We didn't have all this chemtrailing. We didn't have all this additives and synthetic foods and all this concentrated farming organizations where they cram all these turkeys butt to butt, in a concentrated area. Same with livestock like pigs. And this is not a healthy way of getting. It's a good way of getting cheap food and a good way of getting quantities of food, but it's not something that will sustain health.
So we're eating. Okay, we're getting most of us buy our food from the grocery store, and I heard one of the ways you can shop at a grocery store and probably get a better diet is just stay away from the middle. In other words, just the produce is usually right up in the front near the sides, and then you've got all around the edges. You've generally got things in the refrigerated section. You got your fruits and vegetables in one area along one side. This is typical grocery stores across the nation. It doesn't apply everywhere, of course. But if you stay away from the middle, where everything's packaged and processed, you might be better off buying from the edge of the grocery store.
Yeah, I've never
Sounds kind of
thought of
weird.
that. It's a pretty good idea, though. I do notice that they are forced to places like Kroger and the big grocery chain. They're more or less forced to have better quality food. And they have organic food sections now just because mothers shop for their children, and they don't like the state of health that their kids are in, and they realize that a lot of this hyperactivity and a lot of skin disorders and a lot of general symptoms are the result of foods and the things that are in them, the additives, and so they're getting a little smarter, and that could revolutionize the whole grocery industry if mothers knew the quality of food, what kind of diet that they needed, and what kind of um, metabolic types their children are, and then demanded quality.
Too much sugars for children. Children insisting on a diet, and parents going along with chicken nuggets or whatever. And speaking of that, by the way, there's something on the news today on the 4th of March, if you're listening live. But McDonald's actually announced today on the news that they're no longer going to be. I don't know if you heard this. They're no longer going to be. Their chickens will no longer have hormones. They're going to phase out chicken meat with lack of hormones. There will be no more hormones in their meat, so that's a good sign too. But because most all of our processed foods are so degraded, so many different ways that they're attacking us from our food, that not only hormones and homogenization and pasteurization and all the depleted soils alone, all these things combined just generally brings us to a lower state of health.
Yeah, you pointed out one excellent thing is how they load estrogens into poultry and meat just to fatten up the animal so they can bring in the slaughter earlier. And most males and females are estrogen dominant. We're getting too many female hormones. We're getting too many products that are soy-based that have phytoestrogens. And sperm counts are lower, and reproductive capacity is challenged, and that's all just one aspect of some of the negative things that are going on in the agribusiness and the major United Grocers Associations.
The estrogens and estradiols, and then the plastics too. And then you just can't win. Even the BPA-free plastics and virtually all these plastics we're using for and every food item virtually that you get in the grocery store, virtually almost everything, sometime or another is either packaged in plastic or is touched by plastic in some way. And so this is attacking our systems more than people even realize today, making the men less masculine essentially, and making the women less fertile, and messing with the women's hormones too, because you're getting more estrogens than women need, and more estrogens than men need as well. And that brings up a whole other thing with progesterone and some other things. But
ultimately, yeah, people are going to have to balance out with you have to know. You have to study diet. You have to study the food industry and farming. You have to study a little bit of biochemistry and the mechanics of digestion. If I had a child right now, by the time they were in the 4th grade, or by the time they were ready to go into school, I'd start teaching them a little anatomy and physiology and essential things, because this is why we die, basically, when we're 80, 90, or 100 years old. We are no longer able to digest our food. We've been eating so much cooked, packaged food. We overcook stuff. It's lifeless. All we put in is potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus in our soils. And we call upon our enzyme systems, and we tax them to death. And by the time we're 80 or 90, we can barely digest food. And once you stop digesting food, it goes into the digestive tract and more or less putrefies. It's reabsorbed through the portal vein, and our liver gallbladder tries to digest it again and send it through. And basically, pretty soon we're throwing a lot of toxins into our lymph system or into soft tissue or fat cells around our waist, etc. And that's just not going to give us a quality of life after we hit 60 or 70. We're going to start declining. We're going to get into symptoms of blood sugar and blood pressure, and basically inability to digest food, and an inability of our cells to gain nutrients from those foods.
For those of you who don't know, 2 weeks ago in the same store, both of us did a show, and we called it, it's on YouTube, on the Forbid TV channel, and it's called Supplements and Digestion, I think is what it's called. So if you want to learn more about some of those things we just mentioned, go back to that episode. I've also got an episode on there, an hour-long program I did years ago about the liver and gallbladder cleanse. We just got talking about the gallbladder and liver.
Yeah, before we leave this whole idea of grocery stores, you touched on sugars a little bit, but one of the things that our genetic system has trouble dealing with is high fructose corn syrup from a GMO source of corn. And it sweetens everything. It's in lunch meats. Our kids are addicted to it. Truck drivers, it just seems like everybody's out for that quick energy fix, and they get it in pop. They get it in a lot of their quick foods and starchy snacks, but particularly it's in everything like lunch meats and in pop, high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, well, pop, of course, anybody that's still drinking that stuff, there is nothing in it for anybody.
It robs you of nutrients, quite frankly. It gives you a quick shot of glucose, and it raises your energy level, makes you a little hyperactive, and then you crash. But it robs you of nutrients, and there's no substance in it. There's no nutritional value.
Nothing redeeming the value at all in that. So if you're still having that, you're really not serious about health. You're still drinking the sodas. So what else? Okay, sugars is one of the things, of course, and you just mentioned we have way too much sugar in our diet, and this is really one of the reasons we're also all becoming diabetic. Is just so much sugars in our diet, and our insulin, our pancreas just can't keep up.
Absolutely, we're engineered to eat raw food. We're the only animal on the planet that sits in front of a stove and cooks to high temperatures our food. And every enzyme there is destroyed at about 110 degrees. And that means you got to call upon your own enzyme system. As Craig said, our pancreases basically can secrete lipase, protease, and amylase to digest fats, starches, and proteins. And some people, not many, produce lactase, and they can digest the sugars in milk. So we eat so much of this food, and when we cook it, we destroy the enzymes. So we're calling upon our own stores of energy, and we're writing checks on our pancreas and on our digestive enzymes like hydrochloric acid and pepsin. And this is what basically ages us. These glands and organs in the digestive tract have so many methyl groups, and every time you eat a cooked meal, I believe the research is you give up about 1,800 methyl groups per cell. If you eat a raw meal, it's about 1,200. And basically, hydrochloric acid is a methylator. It's dimethylglycine, and you can remethyl the body. And methylation is a thing I recommend people go on Wikipedia and start studying this process, because when we run out of methylators, basically our cells give up. They don't have the material to reproduce and divide and create new cells.
Okay, what do people do? Okay, reducing sugar is certainly one of the things that everybody should be doing, because we have way too much sugar in our diet, especially hyperactive children. That's a no-brainer. But what else we do? Okay, less sugars, or if you're going to have sugars, let's also say this: look at the label. Stay away from the high fructose corn syrups.
Yeah.
Go for the real sugar. In other words, if you really have to go with the sugar, go with the real sugars. Maybe go with something that has stevia instead of sugar, or maybe organic coconut sugar that has a lot of minerals in it, which we're going to talk about here. What other sugars?
I would say, let's say you can somehow build your mineral reserves and you get enough chromium. Basically, you won't crave a lot of sugar, and maybe some raw chocolate has melatonin in it. It's a food. And just use honey or maple syrup, and if you have to have it. But I don't crave it because the biggest thing in my life is getting mineralized. I say it over and over. I scream it at my relatives. Get up in the morning, think minerals. Before you go to bed, think minerals. And while you're just before you're going to eat, take some minerals, colloidal forms of minerals, so that those will get into your digestive tract and help you make digestions. But also, you need them on an empty stomach just to for mineral reserves, for to store magnesium, to store um, generally minerals to make bone when you go to sleep at night. So think minerals, and pretty soon you won't even think about sugars because you won't need them. You won't crave them. If you do, just use a raw honey that hasn't been heated, unheated, not only unpasteurized but unheated, and just use a little bit of it, to sweeten a beverage or satisfy a craving.
Okay, how do we get our minerals then? Okay, it's because we even if we ate all raw foods from the grocery store, fruits and vegetables, let's say, would we get enough minerals in our diet to actually thrive?
It's tricky, and over again we're going to come up with this whole idea is we have to study this. Everybody in America has to study nutrition, biochemistry, and digestion. And you have to define some terms. You have to spend some time doing this. But yeah, you don't know the mineral content. You can go into a grocery store and look at organic carrots, and they might be like rubber. They might have been on the shelf too long, and they might have been from a soil that is free of petrochemicals and fungicides, herbicides, and things like that, but it still doesn't come from a soil with minerals. For the last 50 years, all we've been putting back is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus in our soil. So you have to, ideally, we could go into a supermarket or a farmer's market and insert a device with two prongs on it that would tell you whether or not it's conductive. If it has a lot of minerals and it's from a rich soil, a little light would go on. I'm going to a Natural Products Expo tomorrow, and there are different people that sell minerals, and they have these devices. A housewife could take it into a supermarket or test her own soils or what she's growing in her own garden and find out if it's mineral rich. And then, this gets back to, if we can't get them from supplementing them, and we can't get them in a supermarket, ultimately we're going to have to grow our own foods and find ways of enriching our soils, test our soils, and see what's in them, and find out how we can remineralize, i.e. Spread sea salt, which has 56 trace minerals, or rock dust from quarries, when they grind up granite, and these have like 90 minerals, and you can put them on your compost pile, and the funguses and the bacteria in that compost will recharge your minerals and make them colloidal or plant-based. Or if you were to throw them on your soil, you would be further ahead. And then your plants, we can't break down minerals, but funguses and plants can, and put them in a live cell form.
Okay, now let's just examine that a little bit. Okay, we go in a health food store, and some health food stores will have minerals in a capsule that you could take. That's a big fad about 10 years ago is coral calcium. Now, my understanding of that is basically it's just ground up coral, but it's not in the bioavailable form. In other words, it hasn't been processed by a plant. So we should get our minerals from the plant. In other words, you're adding this to the soil. You called it quarry dust. What do you call it? Limestone quarry dust?
No, just like local rocks for local crops. All the soils were enriched through ice ages, pushing all this rock material, grinding it up.
Rocks in the soil, basically.
And that has all these minerals, not just potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus, but magnesium, selenium, zinc, magnesium, chromium, and 56 trace minerals.
Okay, but you're not talking about actually taking a pill or whatever with this rock dust. You're talking about putting it in the soil, and then the soil's absorb and make it bioavailable to us through the plant. We eat the plant. So that's
Yeah.
what you're talking about, right?
Ultimately, most of the minerals I take are colloidal. They've been mined. They're from live cells. I think they work better than ionic or angstrom minerals. You just feel better. But ultimately, if we use up those sources, we're going to have to remineralize our soils with grass-fed animals moving through pastures, and or replenishing synthetically, with boric acid for boron, all these minerals, magnesium sulfate. We can test our soil, buy bags of this, spread it through our acreage, and remineralize our soils. But the easiest way is to take rock dust, something like $2 a ton, and just spread it on our soils and let whatever weeds are growing there, or whatever cover crops, or whatever we're growing, start to reactivate those minerals. Our food will taste so much better, and I'd be put out of business as a health food store owner, because people would be growing their own food on nutrient-dense soils with heirloom seeds, and basically we'd be back in the Garden of Eden, and we'd live a lot longer than 120 years.
And so for those gardeners, pay attention here, people who are growing your own food. And of course, that's probably the only way we're going to get, and then fortifying your soil, like you said, with minerals.
Just to make a plug, there's a group that's sort of an umbrella group for all permacultures in the U.S., and it's called Bionutrient Food Association, and they're in Massachusetts. And I recommend going on their website, bna.com, and look at some of their YouTubes on how they're replenishing soil. They can get sea salt, evaporated sea vegetables. That's a good way of replenishing your soil. Plus, they talk about just growing in general, and they're a great clearinghouse for all permacultures.
Okay, so what else do people do now? Let's say they can't grow a garden. What forms of supplementation? You mentioned things like honey and sea salt. I'm trying to think what else. I mentioned coconut sugar. What else do they do if they can't grow their own food and they can't get in the grocery store? What do the average Joe out there do to get their minerals?
First of all, the number one thing we have to do is avoid nutrient-robbing foods, and that includes coffee, because it's acidic and it's diuretic, and we're going to pull our alkalining minerals out of our body with that, which pops, and with alcohol. So if we can study, I don't believe we're made to eat grains, especially this form of wheat. And all these things challenge our system. How do we express genes just to digest this stuff, or process it, or store it, or detox it? A lot of this stuff comes up in our lungs that we don't digest, and allergies. So it's a study in itself on how to avoid nutrient-robbing foods and negative foods. Then back to your question, what do we do to supplement? After, if we get at least neutral foods that we know are kind of organically raised on soils but might not have minerals, then we need to look into supplementing. I believe in minerals are 90% of most of symptom complexes is getting adequate minerals in our body. The second thing we can look into is remethylating, and methylators are like folic acid, vitamin B6, and hydrochloric acid, and that'll help our whole system express good genes. After we have enough materials that we break down, our cells can absorb all the nutrients they need.
Okay, explain this methylation, because I bet that's a term people haven't heard.
Yeah, methylation is just another thing that you want after you learn enough about health to avoid disease and symptom complexes. You've learned enough, and now you want to thrive. Basically, you want to be able to be awake most of the day, at least 19 hours, and sleep just so you'll metabolize your minerals, hold enough adrenaline and magnesium in the blood is held in the blood by adrenaline, and that keeps us up and awake um, most of the day. So um, so a few of the things that happen when we don't have enough minerals in our soil, like cobalt, is we don't make B12. And I've noticed in the last 20 years how vegetarians are always going in for B12 shots because there's not a lot of cobalt. It's methylcobalamin is actually what, or methyl carboxylase is an enzyme made by plants using cobalt, and it's really vitamin B12. And people start taking it, and all of a sudden they got a lot of energy. So if we don't get it from foods, from good soils that have cobalt, we're going to have to supplement B12. And the other one is B6 and folate, three B vitamins, B12, B6, and folic acid. And folic acid is another iron in the foliage of plants, and that's another thing that has to be supplemented, especially in women. And unless we're getting really good food from a really local soil and it's fresh.
Okay, this is this the B12, the B6, all you just mentioned. How do people get those then? If they can't get the food, they're avoiding the sugars, they're avoiding the pop, they're avoiding coffee and things that are robbing them of their nutrients, and they still have to supplement. That's where the health food store comes in.
Yeah, that's where you can go to your doctor and get shots of B12. A lot of medical practitioners in Orthodox medicine also recommend folic acid, and but generally just go into a health food store or learn about this and try and get a small garden, with all your minerals that tests out well for all minerals, and grow some of your own foods. But I would over time think about supplementing all three of those B vitamins, which are methylators. And the king of all methylation is dimethylglycine, and that's simply hydrochloric acid. And I think we touched on that last week a little bit, but that's basically. I like Premier Research Labs in Texas because they separate the pepsin from hydrochloric acid. And they know that the two come together naturally in our stomach. When we eat fat and protein, we automatically secrete it. And a lot of people are blood type O's and they're large bone. They need a lot of fat and protein, and they start secreting it, and then they feel hunger pangs, and then they go out and eat a robust meal. But we can alleviate that by supplementing hydrochloric acid, and as I was just mentioning, try and get it by itself, because the hydrochloric acid is just going to break down the pepsin. So I kind of recommend Premier Research Labs, but any hydrochloric acid is a methylator. It's all dimethylglycine. And let's say that you're young and 30 and you've got all the methyl groups in your stomach, but you don't want to keep writing checks on it, so you take hydrochloric acid on an empty stomach, and you'll remethyl those cells. If you give it to your dog, when they gobble food, your dog will live at least twice or 3 or 4 times longer. Dogs and lions, tigers, pelicans, they're all pure carnivores. They eat fat, protein, even the bone, organ meats, the shell and the skeleton of fish, scales and all. And basically, because they have a big acidic capacity, they secrete stomach acids and break those foods down. But they keep drawing checks on it. By the time the dog's 18 years old, it cannot digest its natural food anymore. But so science, we're able now to live a lot longer because we know how the digestive system works, and we know how our bodies work, and we have modern biochemistry. We didn't have this 50 or 100 years ago. So given the ability of a free market where people can make these supplements, we can live 1,000 years, in my opinion. But you have to know what you're doing, and you have to take a thing like hydrochloric acid on an empty stomach. And if you're 90, you can start remethyling the cells and get in over a year or two, taking 50 hydrochloric acid tablets, you can start getting the digestive system of a 70-year-old and a 60-year-old and a 50-year-old, and you'll enjoy food because you'll be able to break it down.
Taking 50 now, what, 50 a day?
50 a day on an empty stomach. This is hardcore, heroic kind of info. It's not for the average person, but I'm assuming that a lot of people are athletes. They want more energy. They've already gone through. They're disease free. They want a little more energy, and maybe they got one or two symptoms cropping up like skin irritations and things like that. And probably it's incomplete digestion.
Now keep in mind, folks, the advice you're getting here is not sanctioned by the FDA. We're not doctors. We only play them on TV sometimes. And so let's talk about now energy, because so many people are just tired all the time.
Yeah.
Well, we touched on it a couple times. What do you recommend for people?
I wish I had known what I know now. I'm 72. I wish I had known what I know now 40 years ago, because I got a lot more energy. I go to sleep and I'm up and I'm alert. But I know how to cheat. I can drink a little bit of coffee and take extra minerals. But basically, how do you got to know what your metabolic type is, and you got to buy good foods, and you got to avoid all the stuff that's going to sap you of energy and spike your blood sugar. And then you've got to know how to supplement. Then you can have plenty of energy and muscle tone, and you basically beat the aging thing. If we don't digest food, we're gradually going to get age spots. We're going to get what they call ages, advanced glycation end products, and skin spots, or collagen breaks down around, and we get saggy, tissues, and our joints don't work as well, and things like that. So part of it, aging, is really a gradual disease state. It's not it's not normal.
Well, every animal also ages, even the ones that eat naturally from their own habitat.
They do, and again, it's because we're engineered with so many with tissue, like liver tissue, stomach tissue, and we draw checks on those methyl groups, and pretty soon we run out. Even a lion in the wild cannot eat raw bone and raw glands and organs and blood and tissue forever. It runs out of methyl groups. But we know now enough about biochemistry, and we know how to manufacture enzymes. We know how to manufacture super nutrient foods. We know how to extract the active ingredients out of herbs and different foods. We know how to get phytochemicals, antioxidants. We know a lot in the last 15, 20 years. And if you're young, you've got to, and you're interested in this, you've got a break that I didn't have, because I go back when I started going into health food stores in the 60s and 70s. A lot of this stuff was not known or available, or the research wasn't there, and there weren't companies that could manufacture these substances.
And the press wasn't helping any back then either, because they were telling us things like, well, salt's bad, or margarine's good, on and on. We were bombarded with things that are actually the opposite of what it really should be. And today we're learning more of that, but still the press takes like 20 or 40 years to catch up with what we learned a long time ago about what we're trying to bring to the people on what's healthy.
There's still a lot of confusion about fat and saturated fats. There's no good ways of classifying blood lipids, oils, and fats. And saturated fat like lard is really easily handled, and easily, even if you're cooking with it, kind of high temperatures, it doesn't hydrogenate or get rancid. And this is there's a lot of myths out there. There's another thing: you got to sit down for a weekend and study fats and oils and figure out what's myth, because even what's allegedly a saturated fat might be only 18% saturated. And the fat from a grass-fed pasture pig or cow is way different than one raised on GMO Monsanto feed corn. So it's just a minefield info out there, and you got to sift through it if you want to. It's I believe we have all these problems, so it keeps us learning and like what went wrong and how do we get past. I believe there's always an answer. That God always has a remedy, and that if we keep looking for it, we'll find it. And but if you want to be playing ice hockey at 90, and you want to be able to climb a tree and put in a 20-hour workday after 100 years of age, you're going to have to know a lot, and you're going to have to have your own food source handy. Basically, I look at Russians and people living in the Vilcabamba valleys in Ecuador. They ferment a lot of foods. They have their food source there, usually a grass-fed goat, or they make their own cheeses and keefers. So this is a challenge, and we're going to have to learn how to prepare food. We're going to have to learn how to ferment it, and ultimately, I believe the way they're destroying our soils, we're going to have to learn how to grow food and eat our own produce, team up with our neighbors, and get smart and find out what are good seeds and how do we get feed ourselves healthily through the year.
You mentioned now. Let's take the example of the fats and lard. You mentioned lard. Now, decades ago, it's been decades now that the fast food joints, like let's take McDonald's as an example again. Don't have to pick on them, but they're all doing it. They switched from lard to the hydrogenated vegetable oils. Now, that in itself is probably a huge detriment to our society, our health, because doesn't that stuff basically become plaque in the arteries? I mean,
yes, yeah, it's really a challenge, and my best reference on health is a guy on the radio every day. His name is Bob Marshall, and you can call there. But he was talking about that today about heating different oils that even coconut oil and olive oil and what it does, and it's just a big challenge on our system. But it just seems to me that virtually raw meat or hamburger is a pretty good fat, and it goes through you very easily, and we break it down and metabolize it, and just avoid all this really high heated oils. And that's what's in your potato chips, your French fries. They use these oils over and over again, and just know what these foods are that you're eating, and call them up, find out how they're processing, or what kind of are they using things like bleaches and ways of deodorizing foods, and there's all kinds of chemical processes that we don't know about that are really challenging our genes, and our genes express that a set of genes would express to take care of a negative food, as opposed to a gene expressing to take care of more energy and if we ate ideal food. So a lot of it's epigenetics. How do we get our genes to express what we're intended as a human being, rather than finding ways of dealing with foods that in no part of our history have we ever dealt with. Basically hydrogenated foods and genetically modified foods and molecules, and homogenized and pasteurized milk. I mean,
a great experiment, right?
Yeah, that's what we are right now. It's a big experiment. You look at young people and the amount of autism, obesity, and just symptoms, hyperactivity, diabetes at young ages. It's incredible what a disaster our country's turned into. We're losing whole generations.
Okay, the average American that might be listening to this or watching this right now, they're thinking, okay, we're saying that I'm hearing you saying, instead of using, most people might use canola oil or Crisco, something like that. Those are hydrogenated oils. Now, a better oil to use for cooking, then you're saying, would be lard, correct?
When they're heated, I think so.
When they're heated, okay. And not olive oil, because a lot of people are saying about olive oil. So,
we're not meant to eat 100 olives, and the oil is the active part. I'm guilty of this. I get an extra virgin olive oil. I like any fat that's solid. So the only way to get olive oil solid so I can spread it is extra virgin at about 60 degrees or lower, and I like it. I think it's a pretty good oil, but I'm not sure we're meant to eat that much oil. It's like taking 100 olives and pressing them, and
It's like
yeah,
ODing on olives then.
yeah.
And
I
you're not
mean,
getting the fiber and the other
uh,
nutrients in the olive, you're just getting the oil.
again and again, I come back to hydrochloric acid. We can cheat now, and we can break down a lot of this stuff, but you better know what you're doing, and you better get proper enzymes.
Okay.
Uh,
Let's say you go to the grocery store and now let's say you're going to go get yogurt in the yogurt section. Okay. Now you got three kinds of yogurt plain
mhm.
potentially. You got low fat, you have regular, and then you have no fat. And so, what's the consumer? Which is the right one? I'm thinking I'm going to take the normal one, the one without the extra. What is it? Homogenization. I think is what it takes removes the fat. So,
You
which
don't
one
know.
are you choosing? Are you choosing the no fat? It's less fat. I won't
Yeah.
get fat eating it, right? That's what a lot of people were thinking.
Yeah, it's immaterial, the fat in it, but you look at yogurts and do they come from the milk source and it's raw? Some of them do. This Lifebuoy is pretty good. Some of these Greek yogurts are pretty good, but a lot of them are flavored. The culture's dead. It comes from a homogenized, pasteurized milk, likely. They kill the culture, and then they put a fruit in it and to sweeten it up. And basically, why not get together with people in your area,
You can make
get
your
some
own.
milk, get some raw milk and make your own yogurts, and or find some of the better Greek yogurts and use that culture to further. It should be live and it should be able to make yogurt from a raw source.
Well, we see this especially in the dairy section, fat free, fat free, fat free. So a lot of people seem to think that by eating the fat free food, you're not going to get fat as quick.
Yeah, I believe most of the women in the U.S. still think that you eat fat, you get fat, but really eat carbs, you're going to get fat. And if you don't digest food, you're going to store fat around your waist. Fat is the only thing that has any flavor in the food, and people that are blood type O's need a lot of fat. And people that are blood type A's, for instance, need fat in the form of nuts and seeds and avocados, and forget about the fat content. Fat is the most flavorful food. It's the most nutrient-dense food, and it doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat is when you don't digest food or when you overload on carbs or grains, which I'm not sure any human can handle in the quantities that we're eating now. I'm cutting out grains 100% myself.
Well, now 100 years ago, the diet was more instead of wheat, it was more for grains like millet. Now that might not even be the grain typically you're talking about. I don't know if that, and I don't know if it's gluten free or what. But what do you think? What type of grains? If somebody can't avoid their pastas and the things with grains in
Yeah.
them, what would
Well,
you recommend?
something like buckwheat, um, a brown rice are pretty good. And you don't need, you can make pasta out of zucchini for crying out loud. And almost all the rest of them. And they're all cooked, baked. All breads are baked at high temperatures, and all those oils in there are rancid because of the high heat they're making it. And all breads, by the way, are bromelated. You go into a supermarket and look, and you might find one in one market somewhere that isn't bromelated. And bromelating bread will rob you of iodine. So halide gas along with chlorine and fluorine. So it's another nutrient-robbing food, and it's hard to stay away from breads, but
What about the Ezekiel type breads? Are those also the same?
isn't it a 7-grain bread? It does test better. It doesn't have I don't think it has the GMO glutens in it, and I'm not sure what the wheat source is, but this is not the wheat that we're exposed to is not the biblical wheat. It's been GMO, and basically before they GMO'd wheat in America, they threw mutagenic chemicals on wheat just to test to see if they could get seeds that produce more protein in the wheat. So our wheat is really compromised. If you can stay away from it, and the industry is going that way. I mean, everywhere I turn around, there's gluten-free pizzas now. Um, People suddenly find out that they got all these gas and bloating, and they got skin rashes, and they realize that it's a reaction to the glutens in wheat, and they stop eating them, and they feel a lot better. And I think that's a real revolution now. Almost everybody I know is gluten free, and it's hard to do. It's hard for somebody that hasn't studied diet. They go away to college, and then it's pizza night, and almost everything has wheat in it. It's a minefield. You got to know what you're doing. You have to study this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to be on meds, and you're going to be in the orthodox medical system, health system.
Okay. What else we want? We've got about 10 minutes almost.
Okay.
What about let's see, other types of foods? You mentioned coffee twice. In one breath, you said coffee is not good, and in another breath, you said, well, you have coffee in the morning. Is that just a weakness?
Occasionally, I'm guilty. I mean, I know stuff, and I get so busy I don't practice what I know. But I'm at the point where I want to do a little more thriving, and I want to get even healthier. Um, One of the things you do is produce a greens mix, and I noticed that's a real good way, grasses, of getting minerals. Almost all of the wheatgrass and greens mixes are loaded with minerals. And as you get older, even a colloidal form is kind of a challenge. And some of the elderly people I know really need a greens mix to get their proper minerals. And
two of the best superfoods, spirulina and chlorella.
Yep.
Really good stuff. Alfalfa and barley grass, maybe not as much as those two, but spirulina and chlorella, if you can take those are basically algae and seaweed, aren't they?
They are superfoods and highly assimilable and loaded with minerals normally, and as long as they're not processed and heated up, it's a good way of getting a raw meal. Your greens mix is basically a raw food meal.
Right. Isn't it true that the darker the color of the vegetable, the more minerals it's going to have? Is that generally true?
I think it has to do with phytonutrients. I mean, you look at a green pepper, and it has different antioxidants and different qualities than a red, yellow, or orange green pepper does. So I'm not sure. I mean, some cucumber's naturally green, and it's got more chlorophyll in the skin. I'm not sure that there's a rule of thumb there.
Well, okay, but you look at like iceberg lettuce versus the other types of lettuces that you can get. Well, iceberg lettuce, the head lettuce that most people buy in the grocery store, very, very low in nutrients, and it's a lot lighter color.
Yeah, it's just water. It's very.
And then we throw away the outer leaves, which actually are the most nutritious, probably. The whole head.
Probably. I just went to a raw food class a few days ago, and I've been stuck on not eating enough beets. But they made, one of the recipes was a slaw, cut up cabbage from an organic source, and then cut up beet, and then you can add some vinegars and make a real good slaw. It's filling, and you can add different things to it. You can put raisins to sweeten it up if you have to. You can start putting some spices in there like cayenne. I just contracted a woman in central Michigan to make, she grows tomatoes indoors. I'm going to have her make salsa for me with a lot of cayenne, a lot of cumin, and maybe some curry, and a few other vegetables, cilantro that binds metals, and it's a food. It makes your whole digestive tract work better. And it goes along pretty well with a lot of other foods. It's sort of a dip.
Can you really make a good tomato dough indoors? Is there a way of doing it?
Yes, there is. In hoop houses, you can extend, even in a bad winter like this. If you get the right soils and the right light, and grow a composted soil, I think you can grow enough in our growing season to make a salsa and can it and root cellar it and have it at this time of the year, because tomato is really high in zeaxanthin and lutein. It's good for your eyes. It's biocompatible as a food to combine with protein, fat, or starch. It's just it's something that we miss in Michigan. You go to Florida, you can get some beefsteak tomatoes grown outdoors occasionally, but up here we're challenged. And,
You have hothouse tomatoes, and they may even come from Chile or somewhere, depending on what time of year. And they don't taste anything like a tomato I remember as a kid, where you pick it right off the vine and you got the juices running right down your elbow and everything. It's not even the same thing. And that's because it's, I think, not only maybe more nutrients in the soil, but also natural sunlight instead of the hothouse tomatoes, that they're just trying to grow them as quickly as possible, a certain color, a certain texture, a certain firmness, and that's all they really care about. Get them to market in time before so they can sell them before that they go bad.
There might even be a hothouse with artificial lights, and basically a plant has sunlight, for part of the day with UV, ultraviolet B, and and the whole spectrum throughout the day, and it's pretty hard to mimic that in a artificial growing. They might be able to do it in a tanning bed, but it's pretty hard to do it in a greenhouse and grow artificially. Even the people that grow indoors medical marijuana wind up with a lot of blight and parasites and aphids and stuff like that because it's not a natural environment. And one of the things I learned about really good organic farming on rich soils is the report card for it is who shows up. Do the woodchucks, the deer, the crows show up, or does microorganisms, funguses, ladybugs, and aphids show up and devour the plant before it even gets ripe?
What do you think about hydroponics? Can you make some good food with hydroponics?
I don't know. Do you know?
Well, I know about the process. It's a way of growing food without soils.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in my head, we're talking about minerals. Presumably, you can enhance the amount of minerals in the solution that's running through the root system. It's basically the plant is just growing in water.
Yeah.
With right nutrients.
Yeah, a lot of hydroponic or aquaculture people raise fish, and they have the nitrogen exchange, and it's under light, and it's heated during the winter. A lady in our permaculture just went to Colorado for a week to learn about it, so maybe we'll do a program on it. I'd like to find out how it tastes, and it might be a good way of growing our own food and being able to sustain ourselves and use our cash flow for something other than the supermarkets.
And with hydroponics, their claim is you can grow them a lot faster that way, like half the time or something. Having the right nutrients in the water solution, the plant is less stressed, doesn't have to fight as much to grow quickly, doesn't have to, its roots are just free flowing. It's right in the solution. And I've seen some types of systems where fish are actually in the solution as well to get the exchange like you're talking about. What about farm-raised fish, or is there any? A lot of people are scared of fish these days, and our oceans have so many problems. What do you think about seafood right now?
Yes, risk and reward. I liked deep cold water cod, but I know they still had mercury in it. I love lake trout out of our Great Lakes. It's a great fish, high fat, flavor, and you can just sear it on one side or another and almost eat it raw. But you are getting toxins, and it is really hard to avoid all the mercury, and our whole oceans are getting polluted. And basically, go back to cilantro. It binds metals, and you got to learn how to detox this body, even if you're eating pure, because we do produce. Our cells expire, and they metabolize things. They have waste products. We've got to be able to eliminate those waste products. We're going to get bad air, and we're going to have to be able to bind different heavy metals and be able to continually detox our bodies.
Okay, we're just about out of time here. I'm speaking with Doug. We've been here almost an hour now. He has a health food store in South Lyon, Michigan. You want to mention the name of it and your phone number?
It's Health Emporium in South Lyon, Michigan. Number is 248-486-8420. I'm really an information broker. I'm here as a hobby. That's all. And every week I learn something. Somebody comes in and asks me about Butterbur or some herb, and if I don't know it, I'm going to look at every resource I have, so I at least know it and know whether or not that person should be taking it or not. And maybe in closing, to check further, go on qnlabs.com. That's Premier Research Labs website, or Bionutrient Food Association, and check them out. They cut to the real core of what we need to do to stay healthy and thrive.
Okay, we have to end it here now, if we're still on. My name is Craig. We've been here with Doug. We're talking about health. This is, if you were listening live on March the 4th, we are in Fort Wayne, Indiana, for a show there. And go to forbiddenknowledge.info to see the information about the website, and the prepperstop.com. And so until next time, thanks everybody for watching, and so long.